Okay, let's kick off. Imagine a market, right, worth over $1 billion, and it's built around something you've probably, well, never even heard of, 2-ethylhexanoic acid.
Hmm.
For 2025, we're talking about a global market hitting USD 1124.5 million. Pretty wild, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, it sounds obscure, but those numbers tell a different story. It's
Uh,
definitely not some tiny niche.
No, exactly. It's a significant cog in the global economy.
And that billion-dollar figure, that's just for 2025. The report we've been looking at, it forecasts some pretty substantial growth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, projecting it to reach USD 8075.0 million by 2033. That's a compound annual growth rate of about 6.60%.
Okay, 6.60% CAGR. It might sound a bit dry, maybe, but think about it, that's consistently strong upward momentum.
Absolutely.
For a chemical with, let's be honest, a name that's a bit of a mouthful, it's clearly playing a really vital role behind the scenes.
It is.
So what are we going to sort of dig into today and understand why this acid is such a big deal?
Well, I think first, we need to map out its global presence, right? See which regions are really driving the demand.
Okay.
And then we'll delve into the key industries that actually rely on 2-ethylhexanoic acid.
Yeah.
And importantly, the factors that are propelling this pretty significant growth.
Right. So the goal today is really to connect the dots, understand why this seemingly, obscure chemical has such a large economic footprint,
Hmm.
and maybe what its growth tells us about broader industrial trends. It's one of those kind of foundational elements, isn't it? Quietly underpinning so much.
Absolutely. Foundational is a good word for it. So starting with that global view, like we said, it's substantial already.
Over a billion.
Yeah, and growing towards nearly 2 billion by 2033. That's significant. What's really fascinating is uncovering where all this demand is actually coming from and, why.
And the report does give us some pretty clear pointers there, doesn't
It
it?
does.
The automotive sector, that really stands out as a major force pushing this expansion.
Yeah, that's a big one.
When you think about the sheer scale of like global vehicle production and all the advanced materials involved, it starts to make sense.
The clicks, yeah. Now, if we break it down regionally, we see some really interesting patterns emerge.
Okay.
North America, for instance, currently holds the biggest share. We're talking over 40% of the global market in 2025.
Wow, 40%.
Yeah, translates to USD 326.11 million. And it's expected to keep growing at a pretty solid pace, around 5.7% annually through 2033.
That's a huge piece of the pie. And within North America, is it mostly the US?
Yeah, the U.S. is a dominant player there. Their market is about USD 257.3 million in 2025, growing at 5.5% CAGR.
Okay.
But Canada and Mexico are significant too. Canada's at USD 39.13 million,
Hmm.
Mexico at USD 29.68 million. And actually, their growth rates are forecast even a little higher, 6.5% and 6.2%.
Interesting. So what's fueling that big North American demand? Why so dominant?
Well, the report suggests it's down to strong technological advancements and a really robust industrial base there.
Right.
Their emphasis on innovation, manufacturing, material science
Yeah.
that likely drives the need for 2-EHA and various high-performance applications.
Like advanced coatings, maybe? Specialized lubricants for complex machinery?
Exactly. Things like that.
Okay. Now let's hop across the Atlantic. Europe, also a major market, right?
Definitely. Over 30% share in 2025, valued at around USD 269.88 million.
And their growth.
A bit more measured, projected at 5.4% annually.
Still solid growth, though, and within Europe, it's probably quite varied.
It is, yeah. You've got the UK and Germany with quite large markets and, decent growth, 6.2% and 5.6% respectively. Then France a bit lower at 4.6%.
Mhm.
And then you see countries like Russia, Italy, Spain, the Nordics, Switzerland, each with their own specific market size and growth dynamics. It's quite a mixed picture across the continent.
What stands out about the European market specifically? Anything unique?
I think what's particularly noteworthy in Europe, according to the report, is the strong focus on sustainability and regulatory compliance.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that can really influence the types of chemicals used, how they're produced.
Yeah.
It might even be driving development towards more, let's say, environmentally sound applications for 2-EHA.
Right. Interesting angle. Okay, now let's shift focus to the region everyone's talking about for growth, Asia Pacific.
Ah, yes, APAC. Currently holds around 23% of the market. That's about USD 416.07 million in 2025.
Okay, so smaller share than North America or Europe currently.
Currently, yes.
Yeah.
But the growth rate is where it gets really interesting. It's forecast at a remarkable 7.9% CAGR.
7.9%. That's significantly higher than the others. That's real acceleration.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And within APAC, China is, unsurprisingly, a huge player. Large market, strong growth at 7.4%.
Right.
But the real standout, growth-wise, seems to be India. The report pegs its CAGR at nearly 10%, 9.8% to be precise. That's the highest for any single country mentioned.
Wow, almost 10% annually. That's incredible.
It is. And you also have strong contributions from Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, Southeast Asia as a bloc. They're all showing growth rates well above the global average.
That really paints a picture of, the rapid industrialization happening there, the booming automotive and construction sectors we keep hearing about across Asia Pacific.
Exactly. As these economies develop, infrastructure expands. The demand for foundational chemicals like 2-EHA is just bound to surge.
Makes perfect sense.
And the report mentions expanding manufacturing capabilities and supportive government policies as key drivers boosting that market performance in APAC.
Okay, let's cover the other regions quickly. South America.
South America holds just over 5% market share in 2025,
Mm-hmm.
but USD 42.73 million. But again, look at the growth. 7.3% TAGR.
Another high-growth region, then. Who are the main players there?
Brazil and Argentina are highlighted as significant markets, showing strong growth themselves, 7.9% for Brazil, 8.2% for Argentina.
Wow.
Yeah, driven by their own industrial growth, particularly in automotive, paints and coatings and plastics. 2-EHA is clearly needed there too.
Okay. Middle East seems smaller still.
It is around 2% market share in 2025, roughly USD 44.98 million. Still, a respectable growth rate projected at 6.9% annually.
And key countries there.
Let's see. Saudi Arabia is the largest at USD 15.83 million, growing at 7.2%. Then the UAE at USD 9.27 million, 7.4% growth. Turkey smaller at USD 3.6 million, but has a high growth rate of 7.5%. Qatar, Egypt also mentioned.
So, potential there, maybe, as they diversify.
That's the key point the report seems to make. As these economies invest more in petrochemicals and manufacturing beyond oil and gas, the demand for chemicals like this is likely to increase significantly. It's one to watch.
Got it. And finally, Africa.
Smallest share, around 1% currently. That's about USD 24.74 million in 2025. The growth rate is projected at 6.6% CAGR, right around the global average.
Okay. And within Africa?
South Africa is the main market mentioned, USD 8.71 million with a strong 7.5% growth forecast. Nigeria is smaller, but also growing.
So, similar story to the Middle East in a way. Small base, but potential.
Exactly. Economic development, urbanization, these factors are expected to drive increased industrial activity and consequently demand for basic industrial chemicals across the continent, the longer-term growth area.
Okay, that's a great tour of the world for 2-EHA. Now let's break down the market in other ways. How it's made, what it's used for.
Right. So the report segments the market by production method, application, and end-user industry.
Let's start with how it's made. Production methods.
Okay. The dominant method currently uses butyraldehyde as the starting material.
Butyraldehyde. Okay. Why is that dominant?
Well, butyraldehyde itself is a really common, widely used chemical in lots of industrial processes. So it seems its dominance in making 2-EHA just reflects, established chemical manufacturing pathways. It's the common route.
Okay, the established way. Is there a faster growing method coming up?
Yes. The report identifies production using octanol as a precursor as the fastest growing segment.
Octanol, why is that one picking up steam?
It's likely tied to the growing use of octanol itself. It's increasingly used in making surfactants, which are in detergents, plasticizers, the things that make plastics flexible, and even in cosmetics. So more octanol use means more potential for this production route.
Interesting link there. Now let's talk applications. Where does this stuff actually end up? What holds the biggest share?
Application-wise, PVB plasticizer holds the largest share currently.
PVB, polyvinyl butyryl. That rings a bell. Isn't that used in glass?
Exactly. It's key for safety glass, like in car windshields and architectural glass. It provides that strength, shatter resistance, clarity.
Ah, right. So 2-EHA helps make the PVB plastic flexible and durable for that glass application.
Precisely. It acts as the plasticizer, giving PVB those crucial properties. So demand from construction and automotive for safety glass directly drives this application.
Got it. And which application is growing the fastest?
That would be synthetic lubricants.
Okay, why the boom in synthetic lubricants?
Well, think about modern engines, industrial machinery.
Yeah.
They operate under more extreme conditions, right?
Yeah, higher temperatures, more pressure.
Exactly. So there's increasing demand for high-performance lubricants that can handle that.
Yeah.
Plus, there's a big push towards more environmentally friendly options, and synthetic lubricants often fit that bill better than traditional mineral oils.
That makes perfect sense. Better performance, maybe greener. Demand goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we know the applications. What about the unuser industries? Who's buying the most 2EH, directly or indirectly?
Currently, the paints and coatings industry consumes the largest share.
Paints and coatings, why them?
It's used in making components for coatings, like metal carboxylates, which act as drying agents or adhesion promoters, essential for things like corrosion prevention, durability, appearance.
Right.
And also, the shift towards water-based coatings for environmental reasons is boosting demand for specific additives where 2-ECOH plays a role.
Okay, and the fastest growing end user industry?
That's the broader chemical industry itself.
Oh, interesting. Using it to make other chemicals.
Exactly. They use 2-ethylhexanoic acid as a key building block, an intermediate, to synthesize a whole range of other things, specialty chemicals, materials, esters, for various industrial uses. It highlights how foundational 2-EHA really is in the whole chemical supply chain.
So just to recap the drivers then, we're seeing the booming construction sector needing paints and coatings,
Yep.
the automotive industry needing advanced materials like safety glass and high-performance lubricants,
Right.
and environmental regulations kind of pushing innovation and new formulations, all boosting demand for 2-EHA.
That sums it up nicely. Growth in these key sectors directly translates to more demand for 2-ethylhexanoic acid and its derivatives.
But it can't all be smooth sailing, can it? Are there any bumps in the road, any factors holding the market back?
Yeah, the report does point out a couple of potential restraints. One is fluctuating raw material prices.
The inputs.
Exactly. The cost of things like butyraldehyde or octanol can be volatile, based on energy prices, supply and demand. And that can squeeze margins or impact the final price of 2-EHA.
Makes sense. What else?
The other factor is ongoing environmental and health concerns. Like many industrial chemicals, there can be scrutiny regarding its production, use, and disposal. This could potentially lead to stricter regulations down the line, or maybe increase the push for alternatives.
Okay, so cost volatility and environmental or health scrutiny, good to keep in mind. Now, looking ahead, what are the big trends shaping this market?
Well, one major trend we already touched on is the rising demand from developing economies.
Right, like in APAC in South America.
Exactly. As their industrial bases grow, their consumer markets expand. Their need for foundational chemicals like 2-EHA is just set to climb significantly. That's a huge underlying trend.
And any others?
The other key trend mentioned is the development of bio-based alternatives.
The sustainability angle again.
Precisely. There's ongoing research and development looking into making 2-EHA or similar performing chemicals from renewable feedstocks instead of traditional petrochemical routes. If that becomes commercially viable on a large scale, it could really reshape the market.
Very interesting. A space to watch. Finally, let's talk about the players. Who are the main companies competing in this billion-dollar market?
It's definitely a competitive landscape. You've got a mix of big, global chemical giants and some more regional players.
Like who?
The report specifically mentions companies like Dato Yudu, Wego Chemical Group, Bansay, the Perstorp Group, and Oxy Chemicals, which is now part of OQ Chemicals.
Okay, some familiar names in the chemical world there.
Yeah. And it's dynamic. The report notes recent activities like capacity expansions, BASF, Petronas Chemicals doubling their capacity, Perstorp starting an expansion, and OQ Chemicals lifting a force majeure recently. It shows companies are actively investing and managing supply.
Right. Indicates confidence in future demand, too.
It certainly suggests that.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Summarize what we've learned today. This chemical, 2-ethylhexanoic acid, it's actually a pretty big deal, right?
Definitely.
A market already over $1 billion annually and forecast to grow strongly towards almost $2 billion by 2033.
That's the key takeaway on size and growth.
We've seen the geographical spread North America leading now, but wow, that growth in Asia Pacific, especially India, is something else.
Yeah, the regional dynamics are really important. High growth potential in developing regions.
And we've seen how it's essential in things like safety glass, paints, coatings, synthetic lubricants, impacting major industries like automotive, construction, and chemicals itself.
Exactly. It's a great illustration of how a, seemingly specialized chemical plays this indispensable, often hidden role in making so many products we use every single day.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads to a final thought for you, the listener. Take a moment to consider the ripple effects, the growth in just this one chemical market.
Hmm.
What does that imply about the broader economy? About the cars you drive, the buildings you're in, the paints on the walls?
Hmm.
Even if you've never heard the name 2-ethylhexanoic acid before today, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other seemingly obscure chemicals are out there quietly shaping our world and our economy in equally significant ways?
That's a great point. It's a whole hidden world underpinning our modern life.
Definitely something to think about. A deeper dive maybe for another time.